Hey, I hope you're doing well. My name's Jake. I'm a big fan of making music, and this week I got around to something I probably should have done a long time ago. See, this Stratocaster right here I've had for probably 15 years. And in all that time, I've never bothered to actually clean the fretboard. It was getting to the point where I put new strings on the Strat, and even that wouldn't prevent my hands from getting all grimy when I went to play. So ultimately, I kind of stopped playing the Strat for a little bit, and that was a real bummer. So I looked up some videos, I went and I got the supplies that I saw people were using, and I gave it a go. I ended up taking a video to just kind of show you guys the process. Honestly, I think you're going to be really impressed with the results, so let's dive right in. Alright, so I've got my guitar on my workbench here. The first step, I'm going to use this string winder to take the strings off. And I'll take the strap off as well. And now what I'm going to do is I'll use a card to scrape away the first layer. So this is really just about getting that very first layer of gunk off of the fretboard, just lightly going up and down in the direction of the grain, maybe 10 seconds per fret. And I'll zoom in here. You can see that there's some flakes accumulating on the frets that I've already done. Now this is an even better shot of that. You can see that there's quite a bit of flakes coming off just with a card. And then I'm just lightly going over the fret. Again, maybe 5 or 10 seconds per fret. Just trying to get that first layer off. Now once I've gone over all the frets with the card, I'm just going to tap the dust off. I was actually kind of surprised how much came off just even with that. And then I'm going to use a wet paper towel to basically go over the frets again. This is really to collect any excess dust that didn't come off when I tapped on the fretboard, but also, to just kind of get after another layer of the grime. And that cloth is definitely picking up something. I mean, man, that's nasty. So this is basically the process, just kind of going it over again with the wet paper towel. I was a little nervous to put water on the fretboard, but I guess it's a non-issue with the small amount of water. This is also a time when I just decided to kind of get after the finger dust that was between the pickups. That's what I'm doing here now. And then I'm going to use tape to basically protect the pickups from all of the steps that are ahead. So I'm going to be using, some sanding materials. I'm going to be using some oil. And I just want to make sure that none of that gets into the pickups. So I'm taping them off now. All right, and with that situated, the next step is going to be using a 300 grit sanding block. This is a fine grit sanding block. And I'm just going to, similar to what I did with the card, about 10 seconds per fret, just up and down in the direction of the grain. I'm also going to use the sanding block across the frets to also work on any gunk that might have accumulated on the frets themselves. And you can see the sanding block is taking off just a little bit of material. Because it's a fine grit, it's not actually going to really carve into the wood at all. It's just going to essentially take that top layer off. Maybe a little bit of wood comes off, but it's really no issue. Now what I'm doing here is I'm just going at a 45-degree angle on the sides of the fretboard. And this is basically going to give a nice little relief so that it's a little bit more comfortable to get my hand around the fretboard. And I'll lift up the guitar and show you what that looks like. So as you can see, it's just a very fine roll off essentially on the side of the fretboard to make it more comfortable to play. All right, and now I'm essentially going to do the same thing with this fine steel wool. Quite honestly, I don't know if this is necessary. I saw some videos where people used a sanding block. I saw other videos where people used a steel wool. I think they're probably doing a very similar thing, but I figured why the heck not just go for both? And as you can see, the fretboard's already looking really good now. So I'm getting diminishing returns as I continue to use different tools. But basically it's the same motion we saw with the card and with the sanding block, just essentially going over each of the frets in the direction of the grain so that I'm not scratching against the grain, and giving it maybe 5 or 10 seconds, moving on to the next one. And so I'm going to buzz through the rest of those frets here now. And now that I've done that, I'm going to use a finishing oil. I think this is called like lemon oil or something like that. It's just this product. And I'm essentially going to apply that to a cloth, and I'm going to go over each of the frets, and you'll see that it just gives it such a pop of color. What it's also doing is it's filling in any pores essentially that have come up now that I've sanded off the very top layer. So you can see that the color is really just blooming. It's also going to make it a nice smooth surface to play on. So I'm just essentially rubbing oil over all of the frets. This does not have to be a very 5 or 10 seconds per fret. It's just about coating the thing in oil. And once it's coated in oil, you let it sit for about 1 to 2 minutes, and then you come back and you remove the excess. So now that it's sat for a couple minutes, I'm using a dry cloth to basically take any excess oil off of the fretboard. That's pretty much it. So the thing's in tip-top shape, and I'll lift it up so you can see a little bit more detail of what's going on. Just a really spanking brand new fretboard. This was night and day compared to what it was before I started this process. So, as you can see, it was pretty remarkable just how different this thing looks now. The last step is really just going to be to string it up. So thank you for joining me on this journey. If it gave you any thoughts about what you can do for your instruments, I'd love to hear about in the comments below. That's it for this one, and until next time, let's go make some music.